Hello, my name is Michelle Sizemore, and I'm an assistant professor in the English department at the University of Kentucky. I teach regularly a large lecture course. It's a 100-level course titled Literature and the Arts of Citizenship, and it's geared toward first and second year students who are fulfilling their core requirement. That's the equivalent of our Gen Ed requirement here. I also teach a 200-level lecture course. It's the Survey of American Literature, and it's aimed at our English majors. The centerpieces of my pedagogy for both of these courses are student engagement and active learning, and I see both of those goals as very much related. So I am here to share tips with you on how to achieve student engagement and active learning in your own lecture courses. I'll focus on three elements. First, accountability. Second, participation. And third, variation. So first, accountability. In order for students to be fully engaged in the classroom, they have to be prepared. They need to have done the reading beforehand. So I try to accomplish this in a couple of ways, depending on the semester, depending on the class. Sometimes I'll assign discussion board posts or quizzes before each lecture. So with the reading quizzes, they're very brief. They are taken online, and students are simply tested on their reading comprehension skills. In other classes, I try to design more open-ended questions for discussion board posts that enlist their critical thinking and their responses. In either case, these weekly check-ins are to make sure that students are current with their reading and their work. I also take attendance. It's difficult because it is a large lecture class, but I think it is definitely well worth the effort. I use the Archive attendance tool, and it's a geolocational tool. Students download the app on their phones, and when they arrive in class, they simply check in. And I know that this sounds basic, but I really believe, and I've come to learn over time, that in order for students to be fully engaged, they must arrive, be present, and immerse themselves in the live action experience of lecture. I also endeavor to remove all conditions of anonymity in lecture so that students don't feel that they can hide or go missing or otherwise slack on their work. On the first day of class, I ask them to fill out information sheets about themselves. So I'll ask basic questions about where they're from, their majors, what they hope to do in their careers. But I also ask questions about what their favorite books are, their favorite movies, music. And I try to learn something about each individual this way. And then I follow up throughout the semester with the information that they've provided me. It's a way to get the conversation started with individual students. I also make a point to learn their names. I try to learn their names early in the semester, within the first 2 or 3 or 4 weeks, depending on how the class is. And then how large the class is, I should say. And then I use their names in lecture. And I know I've mentioned that I use these strategies to ensure accountability, but I really also just enjoy cultivating a more personalized relationship with students. And I think that this relationship does go a long way toward their investment in the class. So the second element, participation. Participation is actually a requirement in my lecture classes. I think making it a grade requirement underscores the importance I attach to this component of the course. And by participation, I don't mean that I call on students to answer questions in the large lecture format. I think that that's an unreasonable expectation. But what I do mean is that They are expected to participate in smaller group settings, in recitation, if we have a recitation or a discussion section that particular semester, and other fundamentals like bringing your book to class, being off your devices, paying attention. All of that counts as participation, and they're graded for it. I think that students come to expect, because I'm pretty explicit about this at the beginning of the semester, that they can expect to answer questions in almost every lecture, whether verbally or in writing. I ask them to interpret class readings or to recap my lecture points. I also create other kinds of opportunities for independent thinking, problem solving, and participation via small group exercises. So for example, we have done what we call scavenger hunts in teams, where they get a series of clues and have to collaborate and solve those clues together through a novel that we're reading. And I remember that we did the scavenger hunt exercise very successfully one semester when we were reading Junot Diaz's The Brief Wondrous Life of Oscar Wilde, for example. Another kind of exercise that we've done is the quiz bowl. And so recently in my American Lit Survey class, we were reading a challenging sermon by Jonathan Edwards. The sermon is called Sinners in the Hands of an Angry God. The assignment was called Sinners Quiz Bowl. And I wanted to make sure that they understood the reading. So we did a fun activity in lecture based on that. The third element is variation. I think, as you could probably tell from my examples of in-class activities, I really like to mix up my approaches in lecture. I try to break up my lecture into short 15 to 20 minute digestible chunks or segments where I change the focus in every segment. This is to maximize short attention spans. I also try to break up the lecture in ways that enlist different modes of thinking. So on one day I might begin lecture with lecture concepts, and then move into a little assignment where I ask them to analyze a passage or an image or a video clip, and then we return to lecture. The next day, I might begin with lecture concepts and move on to an application of those concepts in contemporary society. So for example, recently in the American Lit Survey, we were talking about transcendentalism, and we were reading Henry David Thoreau's Walden, and we were thinking about his maxim to simplify. And so from there, we springboarded into a discussion of the contemporary tiny house movement. On another day, we might begin with them. We might begin with brainstorming and compiling a list of important features in the work of literature we're studying, and then move into lecture content. In any case, the point is always to maintain the effort, to make the effort of avoiding falling into a set routine. And I think these efforts help to prevent, or at least to offset, passivity and even boredom. So accountability, participation, and variation. I hope you found these tips for achieving student engagement and active learning in large lectures to be helpful. Good luck with your own classes.